Good morning, Jennifer. So it'd be great if you can tell me briefly about yourself and your movement.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Powers, and I'm deeply involved in the movement to delay smartphones amongst children here in the UK. I'm the founder and director of the Unplugged Coalition, which unites people and organizations dedicated to reclaiming childhood from addictive technology. I also give talks at schools across the country to parents through a charity called Papaya, and I am a regional leader for Smartphone Free Childhood. I'm the voluntary leader for South West London and part of the Surrey leadership team. Smartphone Free Childhood is an amazing grassroots movement that started in February of 2024. And there are now more than 350,000 parents supporting this movement to delay giving their children smartphones until they're at least 14 years old. There's something called the Parent Pact, which is where parents make a digital commitment to delaying giving their child a smartphone until they are 14 years old or older. And there are now more than 154,000 children who've been signed up by their parents at more than half the schools in the country, and more parents are signing up every day. So it's really an extraordinary moment of cultural change in this country. Parents are really ahead of politicians and regulators and decision makers in terms of saying enough is enough. We've had probably 13-year experiment now on our nation's children with regard to their unlimited access to smartphones and social media. And the results are increasingly in, and they are very compelling. It has been categorically a disaster. Children are spending less time outside, they're spending more time inside, they're spending more time alone, obviously a lot more time on screens, and they're less happy, they're more lonely, they have worse mental health, and parents are rising up and saying this isn't the childhood we want for our kids.
And Jennifer, what was the catalyst for you to start the movement, start the foundation? What was the main driver for you?
So I joined Smartphone Free Childhood in the first few days that it started back in February of 2024, because it was something that I felt really, really strongly about. My son had come home the previous month from his first day back at school after the Christmas break. He was in year 6, and he said, "Mom, everyone got iPhones for Christmas." And I was a bit naive. I didn't realize, as I do now, that, a quarter of the 5 to 7-year-olds in the UK have their own smartphones, and that it was quite common for children, almost every child to receive a smartphone in year 5 and 6 as they, were heading to secondary school. And I was just taken aback, and I thought, this is absolutely crazy. Why 10, 11-year-olds be given smartphones? And they were all getting on WhatsApp and Snap and spending loads of time sending each other emojis, complete waste of time, but also bullying and unkind words were happening. And so it just really motivated me, because it's not what I wanted for my son. It's not what I wanted for children in the UK. So I really dove in and got involved.
You've spoken powerfully about the gap between, let's say, brick phones and small, as some people call them, dumb phones, right? And the full smartphone. So from what you've seen in your community, and what are parents saying? What are they saying that the challenges are, and what they're actually looking for as a solution?
Well, it's been interesting to see the market developments here in the UK over the past year and a half since the Smartphone Free Childhood movement has burst onto the scene. We've seen quite a few models come onto the market. They tend to be in this middle category between the simple phones and the full smartphone. So we've seen things like the Pinwheel, Balance Phone, HMD have come out with the Fusion X1 and the Fuse with Hornblock. And there's quite a few others on the market. I think these do provide optionality. It's good to have more options in the market for parents and kids. However, the price point on these devices is often £200-300 or more. And then, of course, there's a monthly cost. And a lot of these phones, certainly the ones I mentioned, have a lot more functionality than most parents want their children to have. They might be particularly good for, mid and late teens. But when we're talking about younger kids, there are perhaps, until very recently, fewer options. So you've got the old-fashioned kind of what we called brick phones, but the old Nokia phones. And these can work well if you flip out the SIM for a no data SIM to ensure your child doesn't have access to the internet. But the problem with these is that they don't have GPS. And a lot of parents, whilst there is debate around tracking and whether you need to track your child or you should track your child. The reality is that many parents, I would go as far as to say most parents in the UK, want to have a GPS function on their child's phone. They want to feel secure in knowing where their child is. And so the problem with these basic phones is they don't have GPS. And then there's the option of like an AirTag or a TileMate, which is a Bluetooth tracker. And that works really well for objects, but not so well for people, little people, especially who move quickly.
Yeah.
Because it has to piggyback, of course, on other mobile devices that are near it. So, the question becomes, what is the solution? So smartwatches are for kids. Smartwatches for kids are a good option because they're call and text only and do have GPS. But the price point is an issue for so many families, both the upfront cost and the monthly cost associated with these devices. Second issue is that some parents don't want the watch, the ever-present nature of the watch on the child being there all the time. And some children just don't like to wear them. So while that might be a good option for some, it's not a good option perhaps for everyone. So when I heard about the Karri Messenger, I was really excited and intrigued. And in speaking with the team behind Karri Messenger, I'm absolutely convinced that there is a huge market opportunity in the UK. I cannot tell you how excited I am as someone that goes into schools 2 to 3 times a week to talk to groups of parents about the demand for a product like Karri Messenger. As someone who is the moderator of dozens of WhatsApp groups focused on smartphone-free childhood, as someone who kind of lives and breathes this movement in the UK, parents are crying out for a dependable, tech-light solution that includes GPS. And
Right.
from what I can see, the Karri Messenger has all of that. The fact that, you can get it for £50 on pre-order, the fact that the monthly fee will be £5 to £8 a month, the fact that it doesn't have any addictive properties because there's no screen there, are all fantastic selling points. But then, of course, there's the added advantages. The fact that we know that children really thrive by having real-world relationships, and the fact that the Karri Messenger will encourage children to be in touch with each other and perhaps, build those relationships, plan play dates, tell each other stories, and so on. I think it's really a device which has none of the downsides, but all of the benefits of a traditional phone. And so combined with the GPS tracking to give parents peace of mind, I think this will be an amazing product. And making it a product that really can go mainstream, I think is so, so important, because these products to date, they really have what I call the Waitrose classes. There are this group of middle-class parents who will spend the money.
Yeah.
The £250 and the monthly fee of £15 or £20 or whatever it is for these products. But the vast, vast majority of parents cannot afford that. They need something that is safer by design for their children, and they need something they can afford. And I really think the Karri Messenger may be that. So I just think the market opportunity is absolutely huge. We've been crying out for something like this in the UK. And I just think there's a fantastic opportunity to really, really just make this product ubiquitous in the UK.
I've definitely experienced the benefits as well. So my daughter had one of the first models of Karri and was able to give her a Karri, and she cycled to school on her own. And then when she got there, she pinged me a message and said, "Dad, I've arrived." And that was it. That was the only time. Yes, that's it. That's all we needed.
That's all you needed.
And it gave her the confidence to ride to school. And and now, sometimes she gets there. We know she doesn't need to message. We can see that she's at school. It's great. And it's given her that confidence to go out and about a lot more. And also she feels responsible and behaves in a responsible way, right? And she doesn't feel like she has to be constantly connected. So that's great experience, definitely. There's something else to be said as well. So what about if a parent says, well, I can just give my kid an iPhone or an Android, and then I can turn on parental controls? Yeah, now what's the issue with parental controls? Because there's a bit of controversy around that, right?
Well, listen, if children already have a smartphone and parents aren't prepared to maybe take it away, then they should be using parental controls because it's better than not. But the reality is that parental controls are like a plaster on the skin. They can be easily peeled off.
Pretty
so
leaky,
we know
right?
that children can Google and within 90 seconds, they can figure out how to get around the parental controls. So whilst a 7 or 8-year-old may not make the effort to get around them, eventually they will. And so it can give parents a false sense of security, and it can leave their children open to huge danger and to become addicted to their smartphone.
Your movement has grown incredibly fast. How many parents did you say are involved now?
Gosh, there's more than 350,000 parents in the UK that support the smartphone-free childhood movement to delay giving their children a smartphone until they're at least 14. And it's getting bigger every day. So I give talks around the country. I'm going to one in South London this evening. Hopefully 50 or 60 parents will be in the audience. And one of the things they want to know is, what are the products on the market? What are the alternative devices that they can give their primary school children? And Karri Messenger is one of the devices that I mentioned. And I think it's, going to fulfill a very real need in the market. I don't know if there's one other thing I can say, Justin, which is in my talks with parents, I have found that there's actually a demand for a modified Karri Messenger, which is targeted at slightly older children. So the product, as I understand it now, is pastel colors, bright colors, a plastic case. It's very robust. It's great for children. But I actually think that if there was a model that was a little bit more sleek, maybe it had a metallic finish, I don't know, it just had a slightly older look to it, I actually think there'd be a demand for that product for families where the children are maybe, say, year 6 and above, going into secondary school. I mean, just to give you one anecdote, and I appreciate it's just one story, but I really think it's indicative of wider demand. I was speaking to a mum here locally in Southwest London where I live, and she was asking me, because she knows I'm the kind of smartphone mum. Yeah. She was asking me about devices and what she could send along to her daughters when they go to school. And I mentioned the Karri Messenger, but I said, well, gosh, I'm not sure because your daughters are in secondary school. And she said, well, no, I'm really interested in that, even though the target market is primary school, because at her children's secondary school, they have gone and banned smartphones from the premises.
From the premises completely at secondary school.
Yeah. Now, this is not every school yet, but this is the trend. This is where we're heading. And so she said, listen, I can't buy one of these full smartphones for my daughters to take to school. I can't even buy these hybrid smartphones that are coming out. And she wasn't content to give them a brick phone that didn't have GPS, because the one thing she wanted to know was where they were.
Where they were, yeah.
Where they were. And so she was like, oh my gosh, that is wonderful, because I don't need to have long conversations with them like you. She just wanted to be able to say, receive a message from her daughter, I'm leaving now, or I've arrived. Or she wanted to leave a message for her daughter that said, I'm at the shops, I'll be home in 20 minutes, start your homework, or whatever it is, right? And so she's like, oh, I'm really interested in this, can you bring it up? And I brought it up on my phone, and I showed her what a Karri Messenger was, and I sent her a link so she had it, so she could pre-order. And her daughters are in year 7 and year 9. So literally they're 11 and 13, and she was interested in buying the Karri Messenger for them to take to secondary school. And they go to a large secondary school not far from me. It has more than 1,000 students. So just imagine once word gets out at a secondary school, a state secondary school like that, about the Karri Messenger, I think there's even a potential market there. So if there's one regret I have, it's that the Karri Messenger wasn't already available, and that there wasn't that second model, because I just think there's so much potential. And I think the sooner that Karri can get those models to market, the greater potential they have to really capture a larger share of this growing market. Because make no mistake, this is a growing market in the UK.
You've referenced Jonathan Haidt's The Anxious Generation from, in previous talks that you've done. It's a very well-known book now. From your experience and also your research, let's dive into the worrying patterns and why this is so important for kids. So what are the worrying patterns you see in the behavior of kids and how kids are responding, and how early does the harm begin?
Well, we know that the earlier a child receives their first smartphone, the poorer their mental health as an adult. And that's a study from Sapiens Lab from 2023. I find that, rather than daunting, I actually find that really inspirational, because of course the inverse is true as well. The later you give a child their first smartphone, the greater chance they have of growing up to be a healthy, have good mental health as a young adult. And so I really think that's such an empowering stat to give parents, to say, look, that's what parenting is about, isn't it? At the end of the day, we're trying to raise kids to be happy, healthy adults. And here's a surefire way of giving your child the very best chance of doing just that. And so that's why I think parents are so interested in what devices are on the market, what safer by design devices are on the market, because they're starting to understand not just the huge damage that smartphones and social media access does to children, and we can talk more about that in a minute, but also the wonderful gift it is to give children a childhood that is lived offline, a childhood where they're able to be children for that bit longer and not be encumbered by that addiction and that access to harmful imagery.
Right.
And everything. I mean, you ask what we're seeing. Well, we know that children with problematic smartphone use, which is those that use their smartphone a lot, 5 hours a day or more, are twice as likely to suffer anxiety and 3 times as likely to suffer clinical depression.
Wow.
And those are just really harrowing statistics. We also know that girls are much more badly affected by social media and group chat is a form of social media, than boys, although of course those are generalizations and there are exceptions to that. Boys are much more, on the whole, negatively impacted by the dopamine chasing of video games and through the consumption of hardcore pornography, which they access via their smartphones. So a huge amount of harm that's having a potentially lasting impact on our children, and a real desire by parents here in the UK to find alternative devices that meet the needs of them and their children.
I think that's it's really powerful stuff. We want our kids to experience, childhood in the best way possible, and the innocence of childhood for longer and have fun, right? And they don't necessarily need to be sucked into a world of addiction and the use of phones effectively with social media causing so much anxiety. I'm going to wrap up with asking you a few rapid fire questions.
Okay, excellent.
So get ready. This is off the cuff, Jennifer. Okay. But I'm very curious. Where do you see the movement in the next 6 to 12 months, and how many members do you think you'll reach?
Gosh, I mean, the sky's the limit, really. The only way is up with regard to this movement here in the UK. In terms of where things are going, that's interesting. I've launched something here called the Smartphone Free Schools Rating, which is the first time there's been a definition, the first time there's been clarity on what a genuinely smartphone-free school looks like. And so schools can register for free to be gold, silver, or bronze standard. And the reason I mention this is because things are only trending one way. More and more schools are becoming more prescriptive about how smartphones are used or allowed to be used on the premises, or if they're allowed to even be brought into the premises at all. And so what we're going to see over the next few years is more and more schools going smartphone free, or going smartphone free for particular years. So a lot of schools have gone smartphone free for year 7. That's our first year of secondary school here in the UK. And they're going to be rolling that up year on year until that applies to all the years up to year 11. Sixth form is seen as something distinct and having different policies. And the reason I mention this is because that means there's going to be more and more demand from parents across the country for devices that are permitted.
Right. Yeah.
And so the developments I would see is more schools going smartphone free, more and more parents becoming aware of the damage that unfettered access to the internet does to children, and a desire to create better offline childhoods. So I think this market has just absolutely burst into life 18 months ago. It's growing incredibly quickly, and there will be a few companies who are able to take advantage of this opportunity to really make themselves market leaders in this hugely high growth category. And let's wait to see if Karri can take advantage of this opportunity and put the messenger right up there as a product leader.
Wonderful. And final question, what do you think about the influence on policy shift? Do you think that the government is going to step in, take it seriously? Where do you see policy changes happening?
So here in the UK, there is cross-party support for the smartphone-free childhood movement, and there's a lot of debate about it in Parliament. Sadly, the Labour government does not see the need to take legislative or regulatory action. So parents really can't wait for government to act. We need to really just take things into our own hands and decide what's best for our kids. And that's why I'm so excited about products like the Messenger coming to market, because we as parents, we really need those options. We need the opportunity to buy safer by design products. And if there's one country in the world where this movement is strongest, I would say it's probably the UK. And if there's a time to be launching a product, it's probably now. So yeah, I think this movement will grow and grow. And I'm really excited about how far and how fast we can take it.
Wonderful, Jenny. Thank you, Jenny. I'll call you Jenny today. Thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure.
Really nice speaking to you in detail.
Thanks for having me on.